She had everything the world worships. And one secret the world would destroy her for. Aria Devon, the billionaire every headline adored, could buy cities, silence scandals, even bend governments. But she couldn't buy a single day with a man. Her own body had turned against her. And today, on the biggest morning of her career, it betrayed her in front of millions. Executives covered their noses. Cameras zoomed in, her vision blurred. And as her empire cracked beneath her feet, she ran, down the elevator, past her terrified assistants, into the only place she could hide. Her car, her last escape route, her last illusion of control. But when she turned the key, nothing. And from the smoke curling under the hood, a shadow emerged. A man with grease on his hands, fire in his eyes, and a voice that broke through her panic like thunder. "Don't move," he said, kneeling beside her door. "I'm the mechanic they called. And I can fix this," he paused, his gaze cutting through her fear, her shame, her years of isolation. Not the car. He touched the hood gently, then looked at her as if she wasn't broken at all. "You." And in that moment, Aria's life didn't just change. It detonated. If you love stories that make your heart race, your pulse quicken, and your emotions soar, hit subscribe now. Don't miss a single twist, secret, or passionate moment with Aria and Jace. You deserve to experience every heartbeat of this unforgettable love story. The words hung between them like a wire pulled tight. "You don't scare me, but something has scared you." Aria's breath hitched. She wasn't used to people seeing past her money, her power, her rehearsed distance. And she definitely wasn't used to a stranger calling her out with such quiet certainty. She straightened, pulling her composure back like armor. "Fix the car," she said, voice steady but thin. A command meant to create distance. Jace didn't move back. He simply crouched under the hood, sleeves rolled up, muscles flexing with an effortless confidence that made her pulse flicker. Steam curled around his arms, light catching the grease on his skin like dark gold. "I am fixing it," he said. Then he tilted his head slightly, eyes cutting to her through the rising smoke. "But engines don't shut down for no reason. Something triggered it." She swallowed. "And you think that's my fault?" Jay stood slowly, deliberately, close enough that she felt warmth radiate from him in steady waves. "No," he said. "I think you've been running too hard, for too long." Her stomach tightened. How did he see that in one glance? How did he do it without flinching? Without looking away? Without the slightest recoil at the thing men used to abandon her for? Her scent, her curse, hung in the air. But Jace acted as if he were breathing in nothing but sunlight. He grabbed a wrench, leaned past her to reach the battery line, his shoulder brushing her arm. Aria jerked back. Too fast. Too exposed. Jace didn't apologize. Didn't smirk. Didn't look offended. He just kept working, voice low. "You're shaking." "No, I'm not." "You are," he said, tightening a bolt with one rough, precise twist. "But you're trying very hard not to." Her jaw clenched. She hated how accurate he was. She hated that she cared. "Look," she said, forcing control into her tone. "I don't need your analysis. I just need the car fixed." Jace straightened again, standing fully in front of her this time, close enough that she had to lift her chin to meet his eyes. "I fix things," he said, "but I don't fix lies. Not even the ones people tell themselves." Her heart stumbled. A clean, painful stutter. "Why do you even care?" she whispered. Jace held her gaze. Not with pity. Not with interest. With recognition. "Because I've seen eyes like yours before," he said softly. "People who are desperate to be touched, but terrified of being seen." Her throat tightened. He took one step closer, slow, measured, respectful but confident. And for the first time in years, her body didn't push him away. Her odor didn't spike. Her shame didn't roar. Everything just quieted. Jace looked down at the engine, then at her again. "You'll get in," he said. "I'll test the ignition." Aria hesitated. Then she slid into the driver's seat, watching him from behind the windshield. Jace met her eyes through the glass. Steady, unbothered, unshaken. She turned the key. The engine roared back to life like it had been waiting for him. Her breath caught. Jace walked to her window, leaned slightly, and said, "See? Even machines respond to the person who isn't afraid of them." Aria stared at him, pulse trembling in her throat. He stepped back, wiping his hands on his shirt, and gave her a small nod. "This isn't about your car," he added. "You know that, don't you?" She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Jace held her gaze, voice dipping into something deeper. "When you're ready to stop running, Aria Devon, you'll call me." And with that, he turned and walked away. No number given, no favor asked, no money demanded. Just a man who didn't flinch, and a woman who didn't know how to breathe anymore. "And beat," Aria whispered into the empty car. "Why you?" And for the first time, she wasn't asking herself. She was asking him. Aria froze at his words. "Then why can't you look me in the eye?" Her heartbeat stuttered, loud enough she swore he could hear it. But before she could respond, before she could even gather breath, her convoy of black SUVs screeched into the lot. Doors flew open. 3 assistants rushed toward her like frantic shadows. "Ms. Devon, are you hurt?" "We saw the live stream. Your car stalled. Their eyes finally landed on Jace. Grease-stained shirt. Confident stance. Zero deference. They didn't ask. They didn't think. They simply acted. "You're fired," the lead assistant snapped. "Step away from the vehicle immediately." Jace didn't blink. Aria did. No. Her voice was quiet, but slicing sharp. Every assistant froze. Aria stepped out of the car, heels clicking with unmistakable authority. Her scent should have risen with stress. She braced for it. But it didn't. Not with him standing there. "Ms. Devon," her assistant whispered. "He's a mechanic. You don't need—" "I do," she cut in. "And I'm hiring him." Jace's brow lifted, amused. Aria ignored it, turning to him with a composure she barely held together. "You'll maintain my fleet," she said. "All 42 vehicles. A rational offer. A safe offer. A billionaire's way of burying vulnerability under a mountain of contracts." But Jace didn't bite. He folded his arms, posture relaxed but eyes unforgiving. "No." The assistants gasped. No one had ever told Aria Devon no in public. She felt heat rise to her face. Anger, embarrassment. Something else. "Excuse me?" she said. "You heard me," Jace replied. "I'm not taking a job that keeps me in your garages." He stepped closer, not aggressive, but deliberate. "I'll fix your car," he said. "Just one. A beat. And only if you let me fix the person driving it." Her breath caught. Even the wind seemed to pause. "My what?" she whispered. Jace's voice dropped to a low, grounding certainty. "You shut down today, not your engine." He tapped the hood gently. "This didn't break on its own. Something broke you first." Her assistant stiffened, offended, ready to defend her status, her pride, her dignity. Aria didn't stop them. She couldn't speak. Jace continued. "You want me in your life? Then I'm not signing a contract that keeps me away from the real problem." "And that is?" she whispered. "You," he said softly. "Your fear, your shame. The thing you've been hiding so long you think it's part of you." Her throat tightened so hard she couldn't swallow. She turned away, staring at the shimmering glass skyscrapers that bore her name, her empire, her shield, her prison. "I don't need fixing," she said, forcing her voice steady. Jace stepped around her, stopping right in front of her. So close she could feel the warmth of his breath, the steadiness of his presence. "Then why?" he murmured. "Can't you look me in the eye?" Aria's gaze snapped upward. But the moment her eyes touched his, something inside her trembled so violently she had to look away again. Jace saw it. All of it. And instead of pressing harder, he softened. "Call me when you're ready," he said. "I'll fix the car. The rest is up to you." He walked away before she could breathe, let alone respond, leaving Aria standing between two worlds, the one she built with iron walls, and the one he opened with a single sentence. Aria didn't move from the spot where Jace had left her. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. Something else stirred inside her. Something raw, unspoken, and impossible to name. The memories came unbidden. She remembered middle school hallways, cruel whispers behind her back, laughter that cut deeper than any knife. She remembered the boy who gagged on purpose, the roommate who opened windows when she entered, the doctors who shrugged and muttered that maybe it was all in her head. Her past had been a gallery of rejection, a series of closed doors she had tried to buy her way past. But no amount of money, no title, no power could erase the shame that clung to her like a second skin. Her phone buzzed. She didn't want to see it. She didn't want to answer, but she did. "Aria!" Jace's voice on the line was calm, warm, a tether in the storm of her mind. She swallowed hard. Can you come?" "I'm on my way." Minutes later, he was there, entering her penthouse like he belonged, though she had never invited anyone this close before. He carried a small duffel bag, nothing fancy, nothing expensive, her first clue that this wasn't about money. "What is all that?" she asked, her voice guarded. He set it down carefully, opening the bag to reveal herbs, oils, powders, and tiny bottles. "Your starting kit," he said. "We'll begin here." She frowned. "Starting what?" "Starting everything," he replied, his gaze steady. "This is about your body, yes, but more than that. It's about what you've been hiding, about the fear you carry and the shame you've swallowed for years." Aria's chest tightened. "I'm not ashamed," she whispered, though even she could feel the tremor in her voice. Jace stepped closer, voice soft but firm. "Yes, you are, and that's okay. Shame is a wound. You can't fix wounds with money. You fix them by facing them." She turned away instinctively, embarrassed, frustrated, and terrified all at once. "I don't need this," she said. But the words rang hollow. Jace didn't respond. He simply set the bottles down on the counter and watched her, patient, unwavering. "You can try to ignore it. You can try to buy it away. But it's yours to face, Aria Devon. And I'm not going anywhere while you do." Her phone buzzed again, the board. She hesitated, then answered. "Yes?" "We saw the incident today," the chairman's voice rang coldly. "The odor, it's resurfaced. Shareholders are concerned. If this happens again," his voice dropped to a razor's edge, "we will vote to remove you from the company." The line went dead. Aria's shoulders slumped. Her empire, her pride, her control. It all felt like a fragile facade ready to collapse. Her lips trembled as she whispered, almost to herself, "I'm running out of things I can buy. And people who stay." Jace stepped forward and gently lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I'm staying," he said quietly, "for as long as you don't run." Her gaze softened, a single tear threatening to fall. She wanted to argue, to push him away, to protect herself. But she couldn't. Not with him standing there. Not after today. For the first time in years, Aria felt seen. Aria woke that morning with a strange lightness in her chest. She didn't know if it was relief or disbelief, but the familiar weight of panic, the one that had gripped her for years, was muted. By the time she arrived at the office, she noticed the subtle glances of her staff. Normally, they avoided her, shifting uncomfortably, whispering behind hands. Today, they sniffed, tilted their heads, brows furrowed in confusion. She caught their reactions in the mirrored elevator wall and almost laughed. Almost. Jace appeared at her side in the parking garage, as if he had always been there. His smirk was calm, confident, infuriatingly unshakable. "Your body trusts me," he said softly. "You'll catch up eventually." Aria's pulse stuttered. That casual confidence, that unwavering presence, made her feel like she had been holding her breath for a decade and someone had finally opened the valve. She nodded once, barely trusting herself to speak. I think it's better." "Better?" he asked, one eyebrow rising. "Better is temporary. Better can vanish." She shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of what he meant. She depended on him more than she dared to admit, more than she could explain, even to herself. The day unfolded differently. Meetings didn't make her shrink. Cameras didn't feel like weapons. Her staff treated her like the Aria Devon they had always known, or had at least pretended to. But she felt something she hadn't felt in years. A quiet confidence rooted not in money, not in power, but in his presence. She didn't notice the time until the sun dipped low. Jace was nowhere to be found. Her chest tightened immediately. She fumbled for her phone, thinking maybe he had sent a message. Nothing. And then it came. The faint but unmistakable stench that had haunted her for years. Her skin prickled. Her confidence faltered. Panic flickered at the edges of her mind. Her staff recoiled subtly. They didn't say anything, but their reactions were all the confirmation she needed. She tried to calm herself, breathe slowly, tell herself it was temporary, but it wasn't. She pressed her hand to her chest, whispering his name, almost like a prayer. Jace. She wanted him to appear, to steady her, to be the anchor she had depended on all day. The room was silent except for her shallow breaths. The breakthrough she had clung to so tightly vanished in hours. And for the first time, she realized just how much she had leaned on him, and how fragile her progress truly was without him. Her pulse hammered against her temples. She clenched her fists. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow I'll see him again. But deep down, she knew that until he returned, nothing would be enough. Aria's heels pounded against the pavement as she stormed into the workshop. Every second without him had stretched into a small eternity of panic, and the faint stench that had returned in his absence gnawed at her composure. She flung open the door. Jace was there, but not as she had expected. Bruises marred his jaw and knuckles. His shirt was torn at the sleeve, smudged with dirt and blood. He had been fighting, defending someone, and she could see the raw intensity etched across his face. "Jace!" she breathed, rushing to him without thinking, her hands trembling. She reached for his face, cupping his jaw gently, brushing her fingers over the bruises. He caught her wrist in a firm yet gentle grip, holding her hand in place. "Aria!" His voice was low, a mixture of warning and wonder. Her body stiffened. Then, strangely, all at once, the lingering odor that had haunted her for years vanished completely. The weight of shame, fear, and panic dissipated in an instant, leaving her feeling raw and unshielded. Their eyes met. Heat passed between them, unspoken, undeniable. The air felt charged. Every breath, every heartbeat synchronized in a rhythm neither had expected. Jace's thumb traced a line along her wrist, grounding her trembling hands. "See?" he murmured. "Your body knows what you feel." Her chest constricted, overwhelmed by a cocktail of relief, longing, and the subtle thrill of proximity. For the first time, she felt safe in someone's hands, even while the rest of the world loomed outside the walls of the garage. She tried to pull away slightly, embarrassed by the intensity of her reaction, but he held her gaze, unwavering. You're here," she whispered. "I'm always here," he replied softly, voice steady, eyes fierce yet tender. Her knees threatened to buckle. The panic of losing him, the fear of facing the world without his presence, all melted into that moment. For once, she didn't run. She couldn't. Jace released her wrist slowly, just enough to step back, giving her a breath, but not too far. Close enough that she could still feel the heat radiating off him. Her pulse raced, her mind spun, her body finally trusted him. She swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. I think I need you." Jace didn't answer immediately. He only allowed a faint, knowing smirk to tug at his lips. Then he simply nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. Aria's hand hovered over the pen as she signed the contract. Her chest still thumped from the intensity of the garage earlier, the heat of his touch, the way her body had finally trusted him. She had thought the fear of losing him had left her broken, but now a new tension brewed, the urge to control, to protect, to give him everything she could in exchange for staying. She set the pen down and turned, walking toward Jace with a calm she didn't feel. He was leaning against the hood of one of her luxury cars, arms crossed, the faint smirk that always unnerved her playing on his lips. "I've thought about it," she said, her voice steady, though her pulse betrayed her. "I can give you anything. A mansion, cars, a salary that would make most CEOs blush. You won't need to work another day in your life." Jace straightened, his eyes sharp, unwavering. The air between them thickened. "No," he said simply. Aria froze. The word hit her harder than she expected. No. In all her life, in every boardroom and every negotiation, people said yes. They bent, bowed, or bribed. No one had ever refused her. And here he was, standing in front of her, refusing everything she offered. "You don't understand," she pressed, leaning closer. "You don't have to do this. I can make everything easier for you. You won't need to." "I don't want your money," he interrupted, his voice low but firm. "I don't want your cars. I don't want your mansion. I want you, not your world, not your empire. You." Her breath hitched. The words were simple, almost blunt, but they hit her like a hammer. She had spent a lifetime defending herself, hiding behind wealth, behind power, behind perfection. And now, he wanted her, the real her, the one she had spent decades convincing herself was unlovable. She began, but the words failed her. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them, and for the first time in years, she felt exposed without the shield of her fortune. She wanted to retreat, to hide, to regain control, but she couldn't. Not with him standing there, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. "You're trying to buy safety," he said softly, his eyes locking with hers. "I'm offering healing." The words reverberated inside her chest. Healing. Not protection. Not a shield. Not a transaction. Healing. Her mind raced. She had never been offered healing in her life. Not by lovers. Not by friends. Not even by herself. Her body had always betrayed her. Her heart had always been closed. And her mind had always built walls so high even she couldn't scale them. And now, he was offering her a bridge over the walls, a chance to step into something she had never dared imagine. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, unbidden, as her chest tightened. She wanted to run, but she wanted him more. "I can't just," she whispered, struggling to find the words. Nobody has ever." He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I know," he said softly. "And that's why you need this. You can't fix yourself with money, Aria. You can't buy your way to peace. But you can start to heal, and I'll be there every step of the way. If you let me." Her hands trembled, reaching for his for the first time without hesitation. Their fingers entwined naturally, like they had been made to fit together. The contact was electric, stirring every nerve in her body. Her pulse raced, her breath caught, and for the first time in years, she felt something she had longed for but never allowed herself. Trust. She started, swallowing hard. "I don't know if I can—" "Yes, you can," he said, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I won't leave. I won't abandon you. But you have to let yourself believe it." Her heart pounded against her ribs. The walls she had built around herself trembled, and a small, dangerous thrill ran through her. The possibility of surrender. Not to money, not to status, not to a contract, but to him. Jace's gaze softened. "You're worth more than all your wealth combined, and I'm not here for your empire. I'm here for you. All of you." Aria swallowed again, tears escaping now, hot and fast. She wanted to argue, to deny, to maintain control, but she couldn't. She couldn't resist the pull, the gravity of him. I don't know what to do," she admitted, voice breaking. "Start by trusting me," he murmured, "and then let everything else fall into place." Her body shivered at the touch of his hand still resting against hers. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. And in that moment, she realized that for the first time in a decade, She didn't want control. She didn't want to buy safety. She wanted the danger, the chaos, the healing. Him. And as she looked into his eyes, she felt it deep in her bones. She would follow him anywhere. Aria had never felt so exposed. What had started as a quiet, private moment with Jace, an innocent walk in the city, a shared coffee, a brief laugh that made her chest ache, had turned into a spectacle in less than 10 minutes. Flashbulbs exploded around them like gunfire. Paparazzi had descended from nowhere, cameras clicking, microphones thrust, voices shouting questions she couldn't process. "Ms. Devon, what is this? Is this your mechanic? Your new boyfriend? Why is he touching you like that?" Aria froze, her hand gripping Jace's sleeve. Her pulse skyrocketed. The fear, the humiliation, the sharp sting of judgment that had haunted her since childhood pressed against her ribs. And then she noticed the headlines already streaming online. Billionaire's shame exposed, the low-born mechanic leech. Can money buy love, or just excuses? She felt herself falter. Her legs weakened. She wanted to disappear, to shrink into the ground. But Jace didn't flinch. Not once. He moved in front of her, shoulder brushing hers, chest a protective shield. His eyes scanned the crowd, sharp and commanding, and he didn't waver. "Back off," he said, low and steady, his presence radiating a silent warning that made even the boldest photographers hesitate. Aria felt something stir in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years, safety, and more, something deeper. Her body odor, her lifelong curse, the source of endless shame, vanished completely, replaced by a new scent. His scent. Earthy, warm, protective, undeniable. Every nerve in her body responded to it, a silent signal that told her she could trust him, that for the first time she didn't need to hide. The crowd parted slightly, whispers spreading, cameras still clicking but unable to pierce the bubble he had created around her. She looked up at him, panic still lingering in her wide eyes. "Jace," she whispered, almost afraid to speak, almost afraid to break the spell. "Stay behind me," he murmured, eyes scanning every angle, calculating every risk. "I've got you." The board called her phone moments later. The chairman's voice was sharp, almost clipped. "Ms. Devon, this incident, this public spectacle, is unacceptable. Shareholders are furious. If the media traction continues, we will initiate a full takeover of the company. Consider this your final warning." Aria's chest tightened. The threat felt heavier than any headline, more immediate than any paparazzi flash. Her empire, built over decades, now seemed fragile. She glanced at Jace. He caught her gaze, calm, protective, unwavering. "You don't need to face this alone," he said quietly. And for the first time she believed him. Aria stormed into her penthouse, heels echoing against marble floors. Her chest heaved, a rhythm desperate and uncontrolled. The board's threats, the media frenzy, the whispers of judgment. They weren't just words anymore. They were daggers embedded in her bones. Her hands trembled as she pushed past the door, throwing it open with a force that rattled the frames on the walls. She barely noticed Jace standing there, arms crossed, leaning against the doorway as though he had been expecting her. Her voice broke mid-word. She couldn't find the words. She couldn't hold them inside anymore. Tears came suddenly, fiercely, hot and bitter. She sank to the floor, knees folding beneath her, hands clawing at her hair, as if trying to rip the shame right out of herself. "I can't do this!" she screamed, a raw, ragged sound that seemed to echo through the penthouse, through the city, through every tight corner of her life. "Nobody understands. Nobody ever stays. Everything I touch crumbles." Her cries shook the air. Her body trembled uncontrollably. For the first time in decades, she allowed herself to be seen, not by her staff, not by the press, not by the wealth she wielded like armor. She let Jace see it, let him touch the raw edges of her pain. He didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He simply knelt beside her, his presence solid, unshakable, a quiet anchor in a storm she had spent her life fighting alone. Aria flung herself into him, collapsing entirely, letting the weight of her despair settle across his chest. She wept freely, shaking, gasping, the kind of crying that leaves nothing left inside. She hadn't screamed like this since childhood. She hadn't allowed herself the release of vulnerability since she had been shamed for her body in middle school, and he held her. That was all he did. Held her. Not a word, not a question, not a judgment. Just arms that didn't falter. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed. Time seemed to melt. She barely noticed as the tension, the shame, the panic began to loosen, thread by thread. Then slowly she realized something extraordinary. Her body odor, the curse that had haunted her since she was a child, was gone. Completely. For the first time in her life, the thing that had defined her fear, her rejection, her isolation, had disappeared. She inhaled shakily, eyes wide, heart hammering, disbelief mingling with relief. She felt light, clean, human, alive, and terrified, because for the first time she could feel all of herself, pain, shame, fear, and it was no longer a prison. She lifted her face toward Jace. He looked down at her, calm, unshakable, a hint of a soft smile tugging at his lips. His hand brushed her temple lightly, a grounding gesture that sent shivers through her body. "You're healing," he murmured. His voice was low, rich, compelling. "But healing hurts first." The words pierced her soul. Healing. Hurt. They belonged together, like fire and smoke. She felt it deep in her chest, the ache of letting go of all the defenses, all the control, all the money, all the walls she had built over decades. And yet, in the ache, there was a strange, dizzying exhilaration. She closed her eyes, letting the pain wash through her. Her shoulders quivered, her lips trembled, but for the first time, she wasn't ashamed. She wasn't afraid. She was allowed to exist fully, entirely, without the need for masks. Jace's hand slid from her temple to her back, holding her as if she were fragile porcelain. But the strength in his hold reminded her that she could survive this. She could survive him, she realized, and more importantly, she could survive herself. Her breath slowed, her heartbeat steadied, and when she finally lifted her head, her gaze met his. It was no longer panic in her eyes, no longer shame. There was clarity, raw and blazing, and something else, something terrifying and wonderful. Desire. "You," she whispered, voice breaking again, but not from pain, from awe. "You make me feel like I can survive myself." He smirked faintly, a knowing gleam in his eyes. "Good," he said softly, "because this is only the beginning." Her chest rose and fell in long, shuddering breaths. Her entire body hummed with electricity, warmth, and relief. The curse that had haunted her for decades was gone, replaced by something alive, something tethered to him. For the first time in years, Aria Devon felt whole. Broken, perhaps, but whole. Aria's laughter rang out, sharp and bright, ricocheting against the narrow walls of the street food alley. She had never heard herself laugh like that, not in boardrooms, not in gala halls, not in the mirrored isolation of her penthouse. It was raw, unpolished, and utterly intoxicating. Jace leaned against the counter beside her, smirking as he handed her a steaming plate of grilled skewers. "I think this is your first smile in, what, 10 years?" She choked on her own laugh, shaking her head. At least, maybe 15. He raised an eyebrow, playful but serious. "Then we need more days like this." And for the first time, she let herself believe him. They wandered through the city together, away from the press, away from the board, away from the constant pressure of perfection. He led her into a small guitar shop, dusty and warm, the smell of wood and polish filling her senses. Aria tentatively strummed a guitar string, surprised when the note sang clear and true. Jace's eyes softened. "See?" he said. "Life still has music in it, even for billionaires with complicated problems." She laughed again, letting the sound spill into the quiet of the shop. Her walls were still there, of course. She was still Aria Devon, billionaire, untouchable. But with him, they felt like fabric she could peel back, layer by layer, without fear of collapse. By evening, they reached a quiet bridge overlooking the city's shimmering lights. She leaned against the railing, shoulders relaxing in a way she hadn't allowed herself in years. The scent of the river mingled with the faint scent of him that seemed to follow her everywhere, anchoring her. "I never thought I'd trust life again," she admitted quietly, voice barely above the water's murmur. "I've been so careful, so afraid. And now—" He stepped close, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Now you're remembering how to breathe," he said softly. "How to live." Her chest rose and fell, the tension of years melting slowly in the warmth of his gaze. She wanted to tell him everything, her shame, her fear, her longing, but the words caught in her throat, and she realized she didn't need to say them. He already knew. But as night fell, a shadow intruded on their fragile sanctuary. Her phone buzzed, a sharp, insistent vibration that made her heart sink. A message. "I still have what belongs to me. Your medical files or your reputation. Choose." Her ex-fiancé. Aria's fingers trembled as she read the words. He had never forgiven her for leaving him, for building a life that didn't need him, for finally escaping his control. And now, after all the progress, all the laughter, all the trust she was beginning to feel, he was back. She looked at Jace, panic rising like fire in her chest. He has my medical files. He could ruin everything." Jace's jaw tightened. He reached for her hand, holding it firmly. "We'll handle this," he said, voice low, steady. "I'm not letting him hurt you. Not now, not ever." Her body trembled, but this time not from shame or fear. It was anticipation, adrenaline, and the strange, thrilling certainty that she was no longer alone. For the first time in her life, she had someone who would fight for her without hesitation. And that thought, dangerous, powerful, made her chest ache in a way she had never. Aria's pulse raced before she even saw him. The message from her ex had been vague, threatening, but enough to send her spiraling. She didn't expect Jace to react the way he did. He stormed into her office moments later, eyes dark, jaw tight, every muscle coiled with barely restrained fury. "Where is he?" he demanded, voice low, dangerous. She froze, heart hammering. "Jace, please, But he didn't wait for her explanation. He left her behind, moving through the corridors like a predator on the hunt. And when he found him, her ex, he lost every trace of restraint. The man had the audacity to smirk when he saw Jace approach. That smirk vanished the instant Jace's hand slammed him against the wall. Hard. The impact echoed through the room. "Touch her life again," Jace growled, leaning close so their faces were mere inches apart. "And I'll dismantle yours piece by piece. Every deal, every secret, every lie. You will regret it." Aria watched from the doorway, frozen. This wasn't the controlled, calm Jace she had met in the workshop. This was raw, feral, protective, and utterly terrifying. Her chest tightened in ways she didn't expect. Her body responded to the heat in the room, the intensity in his eyes, the ferocity of his voice. It was confusing, new, and impossible to ignore. Her hands curled into fists at her sides, not from fear, but from something deeper, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Desire, protection, safety, danger. The ex gulped, fear flashing in his eyes. Jace's grip on his shirt didn't loosen. "Do you understand me?" he snarled. Yes, I understand," the man stammered, voice trembling. Jace shoved him back, letting him slump against the wall. Then he turned, walking toward Aria with a controlled but intense stride. Her knees threatened to buckle as she watched him approach. "Why do you care this much?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with a mix of awe, confusion, and something hotter. Jace stopped just short of her, eyes dark, lips tense. "Because I shouldn't, but I do," he murmured, voice low and throaty, sending a shiver through her entire body. Aria's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Her body, which had struggled for years against her own shame, seemed to lean toward him instinctively. She wanted to pull away, to retreat, but she couldn't. Not when she felt this. Not when he looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. For the first time, she realized the depth of his presence, the force of his protection, and the way it stirred something raw and powerful inside her. She swallowed hard, heat rising, breath quickening, every nerve on fire. Her gaze locked on his, unblinking, and in that silence, in that charged space between them, she understood one terrifying, exhilarating truth. Jace Rowan didn't just fix her body. He had broken through her walls entirely. The rain hammered against the glass walls of the penthouse, drumming a frantic rhythm that echoed the chaos inside Aria's chest. Thunder rolled across the city, but inside the storm was quieter, more intimate, just the two of them, inches apart, breaths mingling in the dim light. Jace's hands hovered near hers, as if the space between them were a border he could not cross. His jaw was tight, eyes dark with restraint, but every flicker of muscle, every inch of posture betrayed the struggle inside him. He wanted her. He wanted this, but he also feared the line he shouldn't cross. Aria stepped closer, the distance between them collapsing under the force of her own desire. Her lips parted slightly. Her eyes begged him to see her, to see all of her, stripped of shields, of money, of perfection. "Don't," he whispered, voice thick with tension, almost a plea. "I won't let you go," she said quietly, firmly. Her hand brushed against his chest, feeling the strength beneath the fabric, the rapid beat of his heart. She didn't ask permission. She didn't wait for his consent. She simply reached. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing the windows, wind rattling the frames. Inside, silence reigned, charged and heavy. Their breaths mingled in the small space between them. Every inhale a shiver, every exhale a confession. Then finally, the inevitable happened. Jace leaned in, hesitated for the briefest second, and kissed her. It wasn't hurried. It wasn't cautious. It was deliberate, slow, deep, forbidden. Every nerve in both their bodies screamed, every heartbeat synchronized in a rhythm older than time. The world beyond the glass vanished. The storm outside became irrelevant. There was only the kiss, the heat, the undeniable pull of two souls colliding. Aria's hands found his shoulders, anchoring herself against him, her body responding to the intimacy in ways she had never imagined possible. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Her heart pounded so violently she feared it might break free. And then, a miracle she had longed for silently, desperately, for decades. Her body odor, the thing that had defined her shame, disappeared completely. Not temporarily, not partially, permanently. She gasped against his lips, a small sound of awe and disbelief. Jace's arms tightened instinctively around her, as though sensing the culmination of years of fear, shame, and longing. But the intensity of the moment became too much. He pulled back slowly, eyes wide, almost horrified at the depth of feeling between them. His hands lingered at her face, trembling slightly, and he whispered, his voice low and pained, "You'll regret kissing me." Before she could respond, before she could reach for him again, he stepped back, then turned, his coat flaring as he ran from the penthouse, out into the storm. Aria stood frozen, rain-drenched from the tension she hadn't moved through, lips tingling from his kiss, body trembling with the aftermath. The silence after his departure pressed down on her, heavier than any storm. Her heart ached, her chest burned, and yet a strange, fierce clarity settled over her. She had touched him, he had touched her, and in that moment, nothing, neither shame nor fear, nor past rejection, had any power over her. The penthouse was silent, except for the faint drip of rainwater from the balcony, the hum of city lights far below, and the wild thrum of Aria's heart. Jace was gone. Not just out of the room. Not just for a few hours. He had vanished entirely, leaving only the echo of his words, the ghost of his touch, and the lingering warmth of the kiss that had shattered her world. She wandered the apartment like a ghost herself, fingertips trailing over walls, counters, the edge of the piano. Every object whispered of him, his coat, the faint scent of his cologne still clinging to the air. But he wasn't there. Not physically. Not emotionally. Panic clawed at her chest. Nights became endless stretches of insomnia. She couldn't sleep. Every shadow seemed to whisper doubts, every silence a reminder that he might never return. Food had lost all appeal. Even the taste of her favorite dishes turned flat, tasteless. The only sensation she craved was him, his presence, his warmth, the security of knowing someone would not abandon her. The fear she had spent years carrying, the fear of rejection, of invisibility, of shame, surfaced again, raw and insistent. She pressed her palms to her face, willing the nausea and panic to subside. And yet, something miraculous persisted. Her body odor, the curse that had defined her for decades, remained gone. A small, fragile victory she clung to, a reminder that a part of Jace's influence, of his touch, had lingered in her. The city outside was indifferent to her torment, but her board was not. Their emails, terse calls, and veiled threats compounded the pressure. "Ms. Devon," the chairman's voice cut sharply through the phone, "3 days. Stabilize the company, or we begin formal resignation procedures. This is your final warning." She pressed the receiver to her chest, the weight of authority, expectation, and the impossible standard she had been forced to uphold pressing down like a vice. Aria sank to the floor, knees drawn to her chest, trembling, breath jagged. The penthouse felt like a cage. Every corner, every mirror, reflected her panic back at her. She whispered into the dark, voice barely audible over the hum of the city. "Jace, where are you?" Her words hung in the air, unanswered. The silence pressed against her like a physical thing. Yet somewhere deep inside, a flicker of hope remained. The fragile certainty that he wouldn't leave her entirely. Even if she had no idea where he was, even if the world was closing in, she could feel his imprint on her life, on her body, on her mind. That connection, fragile as it was enough to keep her from completely unraveling. She closed her eyes, shivering, and let the emptiness, the panic, and the longing consume her. Because for the first time, she understood that grief and hope could coexist. And in that coexistence, perhaps, lay her only chance of finding him. 2 years passed like a slow, unrelenting winter. Aria Devon, the billionaire queen of the city, had built an empire so vast, so precise, that her name alone could command markets, headlines, and obedience. Boards bowed to her decisions, shareholders fawned at her approval, and the press whispered awe and envy. But inside, she was hollow. Her laughter was gone. Her warmth, long buried under years of ambition and pain, had been replaced by icy efficiency. Meetings, deals, and charity galas. Everything was executed with deadly precision, but her chest remained a cavern where light could not reach. In the secrecy of her penthouse, she kept a drawer locked with a key only she had. Inside it lay a small, worn photograph. Jace. His grin, his eyes, the faint curl of mischief in his expression, it was almost unbearably tender. She hadn't looked at it in months, afraid that the memory would crack the fragile shell she had built around herself. Yet she could not bring herself to destroy it. He was everywhere in her mind, and yet nowhere in her life. She had survived without him, or at least she told herself she had. Then came the invitation. A charity gala, meant to fund repairs for a neighborhood garage devastated by neglect and mismanagement. The words blurred before her eyes as she read them, fingers trembling. "We would be honored if you would attend." Her chest constricted. Something deep inside her, something she had spent years burying, stirred like a ghost refusing to rest. She swallowed hard. The trembling in her hands betrayed the ice she had carefully cultivated. Her assistants noticed. "Are you all right, Miss Devon?" "I'm fine," she said, though her voice carried a hollow ring. She could feel the pulse of anxiety rising inside her, a sensation she hadn't experienced in years. She agreed to attend, not for herself, not for the headlines, not even for the charity. Some invisible thread pulled her toward it. The night arrived. Crystal chandeliers reflected the golden light of the gala hall. Polished floors echoed with polite laughter, the clink of glasses, the carefully curated charm of philanthropy. And then she saw it. A garage, modest and worn, tucked in the corner of the neighborhood grounds. Familiar engines lined the walls. Worn tools glinted under the sparse lights. And in the middle of it, working tirelessly, hands stained with grease, bent over a battered car, Jace. Her breath caught. The world tilted. The years of longing, pain, and cold efficiency collapsed into that single moment. His head lifted slightly, and when their eyes met, time stuttered. Everything she had built, every fortress of steel and ambition, felt pointless in the face of him. Her hands shook. Trembling, she took a tentative step forward, unaware that each footfall carried the weight of 2 years of obsession, fear, and unspoken love. Aria paused at the threshold of the garage, the scent of motor oil and engine grease immediately pulling her back into memories she had tried to bury. Her heels clicked softly against the concrete floor, each step amplifying the loud thrum of her heart. Jace stood near a battered car, sleeves rolled up, forearms thick with muscle and faint scars. His hair was longer, slightly disheveled, and there were new lines around his eyes, lines that spoke of sleepless nights and battles fought quietly. He looked older, rougher, haunted. Not the untouchable, confident man she remembered. Not the one who had kissed her and fled, leaving her yearning. When he finally lifted his gaze, it didn't soften. There was no relief, no smile, just a wall of caution, a shadow of fear that tightened around his chest. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low, almost brittle, as though saying her name out loud was a risk. Aria's throat constricted. She swallowed hard, trying to steady the tremor in her hands. She wanted to run, to retreat, to convince herself this was a mistake, but her feet wouldn't move backward. I came for you," she whispered, voice almost breaking. "I had to see you." His jaw clenched. His eyes flicked away to the workbench as if looking at her directly might shatter him. "You shouldn't have. I left. You've moved on. Or you should have." The words cut her deeper than any knife could. She wanted to scream that she hadn't moved on, that she had spent 2 years hollow, efficient, cold, only to realize she had been waiting for him. "I haven't moved on," she said, each word deliberate, brittle with emotion. "I've been surviving. But surviving isn't enough. Not without you." His gaze flicked back to her, wary, protective. The years of longing, the betrayal, the fear, everything, was written across his expression. He looked as if he were balancing on the edge of a knife, terrified that one wrong move would destroy them both. I can't risk you," he said finally, his voice trembling with restraint. "That kiss, that moment. You can't know what it did to me. Before he could finish, a small, delighted voice cut through the tension. "Daddy!" A child, no older than 7, barreled out from behind the car. Dark curls bouncing, eyes wide with excitement, arms outstretched toward Jace. Jace froze. His face shifted instantly. Haunted lines softened, and the walls he had built around himself cracked. The child's arms wrapped around him with pure, unguarded love, and for a moment, Aria couldn't breathe. her chest constricted, her hands pressed to her mouth. She stumbled backward, the sight tearing through her like a blade. He is a father. He has a life without her. The image was so perfect, so intimate, that it shattered everything she thought she knew. Her throat burned with unspilled words, her heart ached with longing, and yet, a fresh pang of terror gripped her. He might no longer want her. She wanted to run, to disappear, to pretend she had never walked into this garage. But something rooted her to the spot. The undeniable reality that even after 2 years, seeing him like this, alive, human, vulnerable, ignited every pulse of her being. Jace's hands rested gently on the child's back, his voice low and affectionate. "Hey, champ. Slow down. Careful, okay?" And as she watched, helpless, silent, and trembling, she realized the depth of the loss she had carried. Not the years, not the isolation, but the fact that he had lived, breathed, loved, and grown without her. Her hands fell to her sides, trembling uncontrollably. She whispered to the empty space between them, almost a plea. I don't care. I don't care about the years, The words caught in her throat. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. The look in her eyes, the trembling of her frame, the ache in her chest, he could read it all. But Jace didn't move toward her. His body shielded the child, his eyes haunted. The distance between them stretched taut, filled with fear, regret, and unspoken desire. And Aria understood, in that single devastating heartbeat, that love wasn't enough, that wanting wasn't enough, that sometimes, even when hearts collided, life could strike harder than desire, forcing a reckoning she hadn't been prepared for. Aria's hands trembled as she watched the child play quietly with a small toy car, oblivious to the tension thickening the air. Her chest ached, a knot of relief, longing and fear tightening all at once. Jace stood nearby, arms crossed, jaw tense, eyes dark and unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, layered with the weight of 2 years, 2 years of absence, of longing, of loss. Finally, Jace exhaled, running a hand through his hair, voice low, strained. "He isn't my son," he said carefully, almost reluctantly. "He's my late sister's. I've been raising him alone since—" He paused, swallowed hard, the edges of pain and pride mingling in his expression. "Since she died. I didn't want him alone. I didn't want him to grow up without a family." Aria's relief was immediate and overwhelming, a tidal wave she had to hide. Her throat tightened. She had imagined a life he could have had without her. She had feared he had moved on, that he had chosen someone else, that she was too late. But now, she realized the truth. He had carried a life on his own, a responsibility so heavy it had consumed him. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Her lips parted, searching for words that could match the storm of emotions swirling inside her. But the words refused to come. Jace finally looked at her, eyes dark with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "I ran because—" His voice faltered. He stepped closer, and she felt the weight of his presence settle over her like a storm cloud she couldn't escape. "Because you were healing. But I was breaking, and you deserved someone whole." The words struck her like lightning. Her hands fell to her sides, trembling. "You... breaking?" she whispered. Her mind raced through every memory, the kiss, the departure, the years of absence, and she realized the depth of what he had carried silently, the sacrifices he had made to protect her healing, even at the cost of his own heart. Her eyes softened, and without thinking, she reached for his hand. His fingers brushed hers, hesitant, almost afraid of the contact, yet it was enough to send sparks through her chest. "I wanted you broken, whole, anything," she said, voice breaking with honesty she had kept hidden for years. "Just you." Jace's eyes widened slightly, the tension in his jaw softening as he processed her words. Relief, disbelief, and something warmer, hope, perhaps, flickered across his face. She stepped closer, letting her hand rest lightly on his chest. His heart beat beneath her palm, steady but strong, and she realized how long she had waited for this moment, how long she had longed to tell him what she truly felt. "You don't have to be whole for me, Jace," she whispered. Her heart thundered against her ribs, overwhelming in its intensity, as if the universe had compressed 2 years of longing, pain, and fear into this one impossible, electric moment. She trembled, arms around his neck, clinging, desperate. And Jace, finally letting go of the fear that had haunted him since that fateful kiss, pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was no longer forbidden, no longer hesitant, no longer restrained. It was deep, claiming, desperate, as if they were making up for lost years with every heartbeat. The garage seemed to shrink around them, the rain outside a soft drumbeat to the rhythm of their connection. Every nerve, every shiver, every tremor of skin spoke louder than words. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, casting a glow that seemed to spotlight every step Aria took. The bridge was quieter than she remembered, the air crisp with the scent of rain and possibility. She stood at the center, heart pounding, waiting. He appeared then, Jace, calm, confident, the storm of the past 2 years distilled into a presence that made her knees weak. He wasn't running this time. He wasn't hiding. He was here, fully, on his own terms. Her board had confronted him weeks ago, voices sharp with suspicion, probing the man who had dared to touch their CEO's life so intimately. He had stood firm, eyes unwavering, answering questions with quiet authority that left no room for doubt. Her staff had doubted him too, whispers and sideways glances trailing them at every turn. But over time, his consistency, his unwavering care, his quiet competence had earned their trust. Not through power, not through money, but through presence, through him. Aria's own condition, the odor that had tormented her for years, remained gone. Permanent. A testament not just to his touch, but to the bond they had forged, the trust, the healing, the honesty between them. She took a step toward him. He mirrored her, closing the distance effortlessly. She searched his face, memorizing the curve of his jaw, the warmth in his eyes, the shadow of a smile that held every promise she had longed to hear. "I never thought you'd come back," she whispered, voice trembling with emotion she could finally let herself feel. He shook his head, a soft laugh escaping him, warm and real. "I told you. I always would. But this time it's on my terms. No running, no hiding, just us." Her chest swelled, tears prickling her eyes as she reached for him. And then, finally, the moment came. The kiss she had waited for. The kiss that was no longer a whisper of possibility, no longer a stolen secret. It was slow, deliberate, and certain. Lips pressed together with a strength that spoke of devotion, desire, and the fire that had been waiting 2 long years to be released. Hands traced familiar paths, lingering, claiming, and memorizing. Every second spoke louder than words could ever convey. The world beyond the bridge, the city, the lights, the rain, faded into irrelevance. There was only them, only this kiss, only the certainty of each other, solid and unshakable. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, Aria rested her forehead against his. The wind teased their hair, the bridge beneath their feet solid, the city glowing beneath them. She began, voice soft. "If regret brings me to you again." He tilted his head, eyes searching hers, lips curving into that dangerous, irresistible smirk. She finished, "Then I hope we both regret everything." A laugh escaped him, low and joyful, and he captured her lips again, this time with no hesitation, no fear, only certainty. For the first time after years of pain, longing, and fear, Aria felt whole, not because of wealth, Not because of perfection, but because of love. Real, messy, undeniable love. The bridge, the city, the storm, all of it faded. There was only them. 2 years of longing. One impossible love. Will Aria and Jace finally surrender to the passion that's been burning between them? Don't miss a single heart-stopping moment of, "You'll regret kissing me," he warned, but she never did. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell to follow every twist, every kiss, and every emotional revelation. Because this is a love story you won't want to regret missing. Comment below, which moment made your heart race the most? We want to hear your favorite Aria and Jace moment. Share this story with someone who believes in love that conquers fear, pain, and even time.